let's get the ball rolling. So, Lindsay, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Authors Republic?
Yeah, so I've been with Authors Republic for about 2 years now, and I lead the marketing side. Prior to that, I've had different experiences, including I was at the British Museum Press long ago. So I'm excited to be with Authors Republic. And Authors Republic, if you don't already know, we focus on audiobooks, and that includes the distribution, which is where we really started a decade ago. So we can get your audiobook to 50 plus channels. It includes retail, streaming, and libraries. And more recently, in the last 2 to 3 years, we also introduced production capabilities for your audiobook, which we can talk a bit more about too. But you're welcome to produce your audiobook through Authors Republic, or just come to us with a fully finished audiobook and sell it, start distributing it to our different retail channels. But our focus really is on audiobooks. We have longstanding relationships with our retail partners, and we're not owned or otherwise tied to a retail platform. So we're not trying to optimize audiobooks for a single platform. We really just want your audiobook to sell as well as possible across whatever channels will drive revenue, because that is our pricing structure. We do not get paid until you get paid. It is a royalty share. So that kind of drives that thinking as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's worth making a distinction there too, that Authors Republic is both a marketplace for narrators, has a marketplace for finding narrators, and then also can just do that distribution piece if you've had someone else narrate the book or you've self-narrated it or whatever. And I think just making that distinction that there are those two pieces and they can work independently is awesome, because there used to be another service that had a marketplace for finding narrators, and they shut that service down. And there was not, Authors Republic is the only other really one that I'm aware of that has that marketplace for narrators and is focused on helping authors that are wide. Now, you can find narrators on other marketplaces that are more of uh, a direct thing, right? With just that, with that retailer place, right? But you know, it's not really so much focused on going wide if you're going with some of the other marketplaces for narrators. So that's awesome that Authors Republic has those two distinct capabilities. I want to get into sort of on the topic of finding narrators. What is like the end-to-end process for an audiobook? Let's say I've written an ebook,
Mhm.
and like a lot of the other people here that have already said in the chat, like I'm considering doing an audiobook, but I don't really maybe know how or what all that entails. Can you give us like a quick breakdown of how that works? If I've got an ebook, I want to get narrated and published and distributed.
Yeah, so getting an audiobook produced specifically can be a bit of a choose your own adventure. It depends really on your audiobook, your needs, and your budget to some degree. So at the top, maybe of that decision tree, if you will, is if you will have a traditional audiobook publisher, or if you are going to self-publish. A traditional audiobook publisher, of course, will pay you in advance. They will handle the entire audiobook production process, which includes not only funding it, but they'll select the narrator. They will reserve the studio space. They will also then move on to distribution and decide the distribution strategy, pay for the marketing, and so on. So they're really in control of it after that agreement is signed. And in some cases, that might be the right decision for you, if you're offered a deal such as that. But if you do decide to self-publish, if you decide that's the right way for you to go for your business strategy for your audiobook, then you have more options even from there. So I'd say bucket those decisions if you're self-publishing into maybe three different categories. The first would probably be a production studio. You go that route and you select a production studio. The second would be self-narration. So you narrate your own audiobook. And the third would be hiring your own narrator, which is typically done through a narrator marketplace. So to give a bit more detail on each of those, if you go the production studio route, you can select the production studio you want to work with. Typically, you'll pay an upfront fee to that production studio. And from there, they'll handle selecting the narrator, they'll edit the files, they'll do post-production, and they will deliver you final audiobook ready files for you to then choose what you want to do with. You decide this distributor, You could decide you don't even want to sell them. You're not obligated to, but you have those final files then that are ready to go and sell. If you go the second option, self-narration, you would need to either reserve studio space or create your own in-home studio. Some people might already have an in-home studio. If you are yourself a narrator for audiobooks, this could be a great option for you. There are also services that will mail equipment to you, so you could rent it and set it up in your own home. And then when you're done recording your audiobook, simply mail it back to them. And there's tips and tricks for how to set that equipment up and create your own in studio. Typically, you'll see it's find a closet or a small space and have clothes all around you, that sort of thing. One note though, with self narration, before going down that path, I would highly suggest you're laser focused on the requirements and the audio specs that need to be met to sell your audiobook at different retail channels, assuming that is your end goal. We do have documentation on the Authors Republic site for those technical requirements. But while self-narration can seem like an easy thing to do and a cost-effective way to produce your audiobook, and it can be, where we see people running into trouble is once they submit their files to us for distribution, if they're getting kicked back by all the retailers and there's all sorts of edits that need to be made to reach spec, you can sometimes end up spending more time and even more money in fixing those files. So if you're aware at the front end of what you need to have ready to go for distribution, you're setting yourself up for success. So that's my big key for self-narration. And then there's the narrator marketplace, which is hiring your own narrator. And like Evan mentioned, Authors Republic, we have our own narrator marketplace. If you create an Authors Republic account, which is free to do, you can browse our narrator marketplace. And we have over 300 professional narrators who come with various price points, depending on your budget, and accents, languages, and so on. So you could choose your narrator from us. There's other marketplaces that you could check out as well. But something that makes Authors Republic unique is once you hire a narrator, which can be done through open audition, invite only, or a combination of the two. Once you hire a narrator and you decide on the price with them, you pay Authors Republic, and we simply hold that money in escrow. And we're only taking what you have agreed on with the narrator. There's not a fee or a service fee to use our narrator marketplace that we retain. Once the project is complete and you receive the complete final files, that money that we've been holding in escrow is then paid to the narrator. That makes us a little bit unique because you don't have to worry about finding an outside way to pay your narrator. We're handling that process all in app, and it kind of helps too with, you don't want any sort of fraud or anything like that. So it's really protecting both parties.
So I think one thing that is worth sort of distinguishing there again is like audiobook publisher versus like the three sort of methods that you just went through are really sort of the do it yourself kind of method. Because an audiobook publisher, you are essentially giving them your rights versus these are the three sort of methods you just went through, or you're still retaining those rights. I
Yeah.
think, I guess the thing that I'd be curious there, and I think a lot of authors would be curious there, is do you have any like can you give us some data points or give us an expectation of if you went from an audio if you went with a audiobook publisher, right? They're going to do everything, and what would the royalty rate with a typical audiobook publisher be versus if you're going to do it yourself using an audiobook producer or DIY or using a narrator?
Yeah, so if you're going to get a publishing deal, when they're fronting all that money, you're obviously going to get a lower percent earned royalty rate back as part of that agreement. You're also going to be held to an exclusivity deal. Typically, it's about a 7-year deal is the standard. And the royalty rate is on the lower end, probably somewhere around 25% earned royalty rate back to you. If you're self-publishing, so any of the do-it-yourself methods, you will not have exclusivity typically. You can. There are certain retailers where they can lock you into exclusive deals and you are still self-publishing. Authors Republic does not have exclusivity. You can also opt in and out of select retailers as well. And for the earned royalty rate, you're typically looking at around 80%. So that's the ballpark. So you get that higher earned royalty rate when you put the initial investment up yourself to pay for your audiobook production.
So it's like around the 25% versus 80% sort of. I mean, and obviously it's sort of a case by case basis when you're talking about audiobook publishers and what exactly deal you get with them, but it's good to know sort of what those average rates are going to be. So I appreciate that. Um, I am also along that train of thought. What's like the average cost of each one of the methods if you are going to do it yourself? Like how much money do you think you're going to need to invest if you go with a producer versus self narration versus going with an author's direct or author's republic uh, marketplace narrator?
Right. So if you self-narrate, it really is going to come down to rental costs, whether it's studio or equipment. And if you already have those things, there are audiobook narrators who narrate for others. They can easily do it for themselves. Then, you've already invested that in yourself.
It's essentially free. Yeah, at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
but if you go one of the other methods, if you go with a production studio or if you go with a narrator marketplace, the standard is per finished hour rate, and you may see that referred to as PFH in certain reference materials, certainly across the Authors Republic site. And narrators can set their own per finished hour rate, and that refers to every finished hour of the audiobook. So we estimate that a narrator is typically putting in 3 to 4 hours of work for every hour of a completed audiobook. So the per finished hour rate is really only that finished hourly rate. So if you had a 8 hour audiobook, you would be charged 8 times the narrator's per finished hour rate. Even if you went with a production studio, you will likely see a per finished hour rate. They might also have certain upcharges depending on the other services that they're offering you. If you're going through our narrator marketplace, you will see the per finished hour rate, and it will simply be the length of your audiobook times that narrator's rate. And as a quick, sort of way to calculate how long your audiobook would be if you're in the early stages and looking to record it, we typically say, take your manuscript, what the narrator would be recording, and your total word count, and divide that by roughly 10,000. On our website, we say 9,300, but it might be easier right now to do quick math to just go with 10,000.
Yeah.
And that will give you how long your audiobook should be in hours, roughly. It can depend on how quickly or slowly the narrator reads and factors such as that. So it's not a perfect equation, but it will give you a good ballpark as you're trying to figure out what per finished hour rate you should be looking for with your budget for your audiobook.
So I've got a 50,000 word book. If I divide that by 10,000, that gives me 5 hours. And then what's sort of the general range for what that cost is for per finished hours? So I'd take that 5 hours times, like, is it $100 an hour, $1,000 an hour? I'm sure there's a huge range
There
depending
is
on the narrator.
yes,
So it's
you are
I
exactly right.
but
There
for
is
like a but for like give us a sort of a breakdown of like here's sort of like you might be able to find a beginner audiobook narrator in this price range. If you want something that's like super famous, it can go all the way up to here. Sort of could you give us sort of like a general guide there?
Yeah, you are right. There is a very wide range, and you'll even see that reflected in a relatively small sample site in our narrator marketplace compared to the overarching professional narrator population are just about 350 or so now. You can find quite low per finished hour rates all the way up to those higher price points. But I'd say probably the industry average is around somewhere between 250 to 400 for qualified experienced narrators. But you can find people who are in the early stages of their careers who are at lower per finished hour rates. And then there are obviously people who are at much higher and have the experience and the credentials to back that up as well.
Got it. So if I've got a 50,000 word book, divide that by 10,000, so that gets me to about 5 hours of audio. I would then say like between 250 and 400, so let's call it $300. So 5 times 300. So I need to have in my mind that I might be paying somewhere around $1,500 to get that ebook turned into an audiobook.
Right.
Okay,
And
cool.
paying purely the per finished hour rate with none of
Yeah.
the potential upcharges from production studios or otherwise.
Right. And that is, I mean, obviously, we're talking about averages here, and like what you're gonna actually find is gonna be maybe different, and it's gonna depend on who you want to go with, all that stuff. So, that's super helpful information. I am, I'd want to get to a few of our other questions here now as well. So, talking a little bit less about the audiobook sort of narration and production process, I want to get into the distribution part of things. So,
Okay.
where does Authors Republic distribute audiobooks to? And why would I want to use an aggregator like Authors Republic to distribute my audiobooks instead of I don't know, instead of just going to like just one retailer or something like that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And typically, that's the next stage after you've produced your audiobook. So it's a great segue. Authors Republic, we distribute to 50 plus channels, and that includes all your major retailers: Audible, Google, Apple, now Spotify, libraries, Hoopla and Overdrive, the Libby app, which are really valuable for audiobooks, and then streaming channels as well. So we distribute to probably everyone that you could have heard of, as well as some niche categories, some startups, and just really trying to give audiobooks the widest coverage possible. And we recommend going with a wide strategy to help diversify your revenue streams. That way, if one platform goes down or changes their algorithm or changes their pricing structure, you've got 49 plus other platforms that are still driving revenue, helping you find new listeners. We prefer this method as opposed to, you could go exclusive with other self-publishing services, but you're really relying on one platform typically, and they are in full control then. And sometimes that has been to the detriment of self-published authors. We've seen in the past in that case. Aggregators are a great way to go because you can hit so many channels when you're distributing wide. So the 50 plus, you have one platform where you can see your sales, you have all of your information. We also work on your behalf. So if there are issues with the tech specs, we can come back to you and kind of help you figure them out if they're an easy fix we've seen many times before, or give you some more clarity. We also have such volume and such long-standing relationships with these retailers that if they're looking for promotional opportunities or they have certain events on their editorial calendar, they'll ask us for nominations of audiobooks that they should consider to be featured on their site or in their app, and we will call for nominations or submissions from our authors and bring those back to the retailers. We can also negotiate really excellent terms because of our volume and because of our longstanding relationship with these retailers that
Yeah.
an individual author on their own wouldn't have access to.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we got to talk about the elephant in the room. When we're talking about exclusive versus wide, we're really talking about Audible, right? So you're either going to go exclusive with Audible or you're going to go wide and go to multiple retailers. What's the royalty rate that Audible gives to exclusive authors versus, again, the royalty rate that you get when you're going wide?
So Audible will give, if you're exclusive with, and you'd go through ACX. So if you're
Right.
exclusive, would have a 40% earned royalty rate back. And then if you are not exclusive, you would get 25%, but you can then take your title and sell it wide on other channels as well. So that's the consideration there. And then if
So
you
it's that 15%, it's a 15% difference. So if you go exclusive with Audible or ACX, you will get 15% more. And you really have to weigh that against, okay, what could my potential, do I want to put all of my eggs in one basket for an extra 15% on whatever that's going to be? And what's some of the stuff that what's some of the other stuff? I mean, obviously, when you go exclusive, you don't really, you're limiting yourself to one retailer. Like
and,
that's what that means. But
and
what is some of the
frankly,
other stuff that you give up when you go exclusive as well? Because like
I,
one thing that comes to my mind is you can't price your book,
right.
right?
But well, that's the case if you are selling an Audible. Regardless, they will price your book.
Right.
There's no price control. So whether
Right.
you are exclusive, not exclusive, reaching them through an aggregator, that is just an Audible policy. I
Right.
do think, though, to even back up, it is important to consider, like, what is the right strategy for you? Is wide the correct strategy, or is Audible exclusive? There are some genres that over-index in Audible, and so that could be a strategy. However, as the market is shifting, and it is really shifting in recent, I mean, even within the last year or less, there are new players in the audiobook space, new retailers coming in that are challenging Audible. So even if you maybe a couple of years ago had made the decision that being exclusive was the right call, it's something that's worth taking a look at again, because wide is continuing to change, and Audible having competition is good for self-published authors and for indie publishers. So it's a good thing to have competition in this space, and for Audible to consider their pricing structure as well. We've heard whisperings that they're going to roll out some new pricing models. So we'll see. We haven't seen those yet, but it helps put some pressure on them as well, rather than giving them the ability to just decide for all of us. But going wide, you do have some ways where you can price your audiobook. There are many retailers that will accept whatever MSRP you upload into your metadata. Audible will not, like I said, but there are others that will. And then you can do different pricing promotions. There are different deals that you could do. So for example, Chirp, we're direct with Chirp. You can do Chirp deals if you'd like. You could also do paid ads through Chirp or other services as well. You don't know where your listeners are. So part of the beauty of going wide is that as the audiobook market grows and people are finding the platforms that they like to listen to audiobooks on, you're giving your audiobook a better chance to be found by those listeners. And something about audiobooks is, even though it's been growing by double digits year over year for over a decade, there are still simply not as many audiobooks to compete with as there are ebooks and print books. So I've just said, like, there are more and more audiobooks entering. There is still stiff competition. It's not, an easy road, but you are giving your book rather, some more room to breathe if you have this format available, because there's just not as much competition as in the other formats. So maybe your genre can rise to the top of certain algorithms or searches on the audio platforms that they just cannot on ebook or on print yet. So you're giving your book some more opportunities there. Also, when there are audio specific promotions or editorial calendar events coming up, your book would qualify. Something else that we have seen that's worth considering is, if you have super fans, we'll see they just want to buy up as much as they can of the titles that they love. So even if they've already purchased the print version and they've purchased the ebook version, they're going to also want the audiobook version. They're going to want it across all the different formats they can get their hands on, or listen to with their headphones. So it's just an important way to diversify your revenue and reach new listeners.
Yeah, for sure. I pretty much exclusively listen to audiobooks because I've got two small kids at home. And so it's, in the genre that I tend to enjoy, I read a genre called lit RPG for anyone that's interested. Uh, and there's not all that many authors in that genre, and then there's even fewer audiobooks in that genre because it's not a big genre, and so it's one of those things where, like, where is your audience, and can you reach more people through that audience? I do want to follow up because there were a lot of questions about some of the things that we did mention there. So people were a little bit confused. Audible does not let you choose the price of your audiobooks. And that is regardless of whether or not you're exclusive with them, or you're going or you're going through a publisher or something else like that, right? Like, Audible is basically in charge of the price of your audiobook and you have no say.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Yep. And then and someone else wanted to know, let's see. So does that mean your audiobooks are also exclusive to Amazon? If you're exclusive to Audible, does that mean your audiobooks are exclusive to Amazon? And Audible is owned by Amazon, so yes.
Yes, that's right.
And then someone else wanted to know, does Audible still lock you in for 7 years?
They do, but there are ways where, and there's certain criteria you have to meet where even if it hasn't been 7 years, you can write to them and ask to be let out of your non-exclusive agreement. I don't want to speak to what that specific criteria is. I don't have it off the top of my head, but if you're interested in that, you can feel free to reach out to Authors Republic, and we can kind of help you with that if you think that your audiobook might fit and you're interested in getting out of an exclusive agreement.
If you're, and someone else wanted to ask as well, if you go with Authors Republic, can you still go exclusive with Audible through
No,
Authors Republic?
no, it is an either or when it comes to being exclusive with Audible. If you decide to be exclusive with Audible, you are exclusive. And that's not an Authors Republic policy. If you try to go to any other wide aggregator or distribute direct even on your own to another service, you have made an agreement with Audible that you will be exclusive with them. If you are not exclusive, you can distribute to Audible, and then you can distribute everywhere else with Authors Republic.
Awesome. So you can distribute to Audible through Authors Republic. You just won't be able to be exclusive to them if you go through Authors Republic.
Right. If you're exclusive with them,
Fantastic.
you are exclusive. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Uh, and then someone else had also asked in regards to this, if you so for those authors that are with KDP Select, so they're exclusive with Amazon for their ebooks, does that also include their audiobooks?
No, 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 your audiobooks are not wrapped into that. If you are with KDP, it applies to your ebooks, not your audiobooks.
Right. So yeah, so in terms of publishing, like those are two different sets of rights essentially, right? You're sort of licensing the rights to your ebook version and the audiobook rights and how you distribute those. There's sort of two different realms.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. Yeah. So for those authors that are in KDP Select, they could still go wide with their audiobooks. They don't need to stick with just Amazon/Audible. That's good to know. Let's go to some other questions. We have had so many questions here. So let's see. I want to go back to some of the questions that we got at the very beginning of the meeting before we got into all of these other things, because I want to make sure that we got them answered. Uh, and so I'm just gonna start going through them. So for if you're self-narrating, would you go with Audacity or GarageBand? Do you have any suggestions in terms of software for recording
Yeah,
or
we
mixing?
typically recommend Audacity. That's just been our standard. That's the ops team. I defer to them, and that's the one that I know that they typically recommend.
And the other thing is Audacity is available on both PC and Mac. As far as I'm aware, GarageBand is exclusive to Mac. I'm not certain, but that would be another sort of thing in whether in making that choice that you need to consider. Someone else asked, my book is written from a dual point of view. I'd like to hire a male narrator to narrate the main character, and I'd like to narrate the female main character. I have no real experience, but feel passionate about this. How do I go about this? Do I hire a production company? How do you price and then separate question, how do you price an audiobook? So let's address the dual POV audiobook.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a great question. And something too that I just want to call out is at this point, our narrator marketplace does not support more than one narrator. So just if you were thinking about going that route, we just do not support it yet. However, we do accept those books for distribution. So my recommendation would be to it doesn't hurt to talk to a production studio and see if they can help you if you have one in mind, or since you want to voice one of the characters yourself already, if you know of other narrators or can connect with narrators in another way, then you could work together and submit your final audiobook for distribution. So I just wanted to make it clear before you go and explore our narrator marketplace, that would not be the place for multiple POV, but you can certainly do that.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah, that would, and I assume that would also be a little bit tricky with a production company potentially as well. You'd have to work it out. I'm sure every production company is different too, because
Yes.
some may not be willing to take your self-recorded version and mix that with their in-studio version because it might there might be two differences in sort of the sound quality that they would have trouble with, or something along those lines, or
Yeah,
um,
I would definitely shop around and see if there's anyone that could, and it would depend on your setup too, if you have a professional setup or if you could even go into their studio if they're local. So there's ways that you could probably make it work, but it's going to require some research.
yeah. And then when it comes to actual audiobook files, someone asked, do you record chapters, then reassemble them into a single file, or is it uploaded chapter by chapter to these various platforms?
It's uploaded chapter by chapter. So you have your own, there is a different audio file for each chapter, as well as your sample track, your opening track, your closing track. So it is not just one large file put together and uploaded
Y-
in terms of
y-
audio.
Yeah, so people can kind of think about it like an album, like
Mhm.
each chapter is a song on the album, where that song has its own file. And so in this way, like with audiobooks, like that chapter is its own sort of just file standalone. And that also allows the readers to then navigate through the chapters, versus if it were all just one big file, it would be very difficult slash impossible to navigate between the different chapters. Uh, Having that chapter by chapter upload makes it easy to go, oh, I wanted to start this chapter.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right. And there's also requirements even for the length, how long those can be. So if you did try to upload an entire audiobook that was, say, 5 hours, you wouldn't even be able to if it was all one file, it would get kicked back.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, Someone says that they own their files, so they can't upload them to ACX, but they have them upload to their shop, and they're wondering if there are any other places they should be looking at to distribute them. And someone else earlier had also asked, so I'm going to tie this question in, had asked, what's the list of places that Authors Republic distributes to? So that could maybe give them give them that answer. Is there a place that we can easily find that on the Authors Republic website, just the list of places that you guys
Yes.
distribute to?
Let me actually just pop in the chat. We have just a page that is titled Our Partners. And so you,
Fantastic.
because there's so many, I'd love to list them off, but
Yeah, no, it's a lot.
and
It's
if you miss it in the chat, which appears to be very active, if you go to authorsrepublic.com, there's an about tab and our partners it's right there for you to see.
fantastic. Awesome. Let's see. When we were deciding on audiobook book distribution, it came down to another service versus Authors Republic. We ended up going with the other service because of the chirp deals. But now with the Spotify buyout, we are looking at switching. Can you give me an elevator pitch for why I should go with Authors Republic and what the terms look like? Um, I think also just worth mentioning in there, like to talk a little bit about Chirp and Authors Republic, and maybe a little bit how that works.
Yeah, so when Chirp first launched long ago, they kicked off a relationship with another aggregator, but that like I said was long ago. Times have changed. We work directly with Chirp. We participate in Chirp deals. We send them Chirp deals. In fact, we've been pretty successful lately in getting Chirp deals, so that's been great to see. And I think that that's probably the case for a lot of historical information. Like I said, audiobook in all its different ways, specifically right now in distribution, I suppose for us, is changing. And what was the case or was true a year, 2 years, 5 years ago is not the case now, as others in the space are optimizing for specific retail platforms. That's being taken into consideration by the competitors in the retail space. And so Authors Republic is uniquely positioned because we are not tied to a retail site. So we are continuing to play nice with all of the retail channels because we're not optimizing for one specific retail site. So we work directly with Chirp. We have direct relationships with our retail partners to continue to give our authors and their audiobooks the best terms available. And in fact, I think I saw a couple of people calling out, we have a 80% off right now on our site that is ending tomorrow. You will all be the first to know that that will be extended until the end of August. But even better for this group is we are going to offer Story Origin webinar attendees 80% on their account when they sign up. So I'll pop that link into the chat as well. If you follow that link simply by joining this webinar, you can sign up and have 80% for your account. If you have already signed up with Authors Republic and would like that 80% on your account, I'll also put an email address in. Please just reach out to us. Do not create a new account, and we can update your account information.
Yeah. So anyone, anyone that is debating, oh, I'm not quite at the stage where I'm ready to produce an audiobook yet, like maybe it's a month or two down the line, like go and create your Authors Republic account today. Don't wait another 6 months or whatever to go when you're thinking about making this decision. Go create your account today, and get on that deal. Because yeah, you'll that would be, yeah, you don't want to miss out on that. Um, and someone says, I'm launching a new pen name and want to have their books available in audio. What is the most user-friendly places to find voice actors? I think we would probably say Authors Republic's marketplace is a really good, easy way to find those narrators. Otherwise, you could also go that route of sort of Googling the various audiobook producers and
Yeah.
and sort of just coming through Google.
Yeah, and we, we have the marketplace available to just assist authors in finding that resource to create their audiobook. You do not have to create your audiobook with us, as I think
Right.
we talked about already. And also, if you decide that you want to create your audiobook through us and you don't even want to distribute it, you can just hold those files or do what you want with those files. We do have an easy workflow for you to just move directly into distribution. But I think checking out our narrator marketplace and seeing if we have the specific voice price point that you're looking for is a great way to start.
Um, Someone else also wanted to know about sort of, are there so there are multiple other aggregators in the space for distributing your audiobooks. What sort of sets Authors Republic apart from some of the other distribution or aggregators in the space? Are there like specific places that you can reach with Authors Republic that you can't reach with other aggregators or anything like that?
I think something that we hear frequently is the customer service aspect is where Authors Republic, we have real people when you email into us that are getting back to you in a timely fashion. So that is a big differentiator and will help you through your audiobook journey, no matter where you are. It doesn't take a week or 2 weeks. You typically hear back the same day or within 2 business days. And then another piece is going back to we are not optimizing for a specific retail platform. We are agnostic in the retail platforms. We want to work with everybody. We want the audiobooks to have the widest reach possible. So that is another place where I think it is to authors' benefit to work with Authors Republic.
Awesome. We've also had some mentions of AI in the chat as well across a few different questions. Does Authors Republic accept AI narration, distribute AI narrated audiobooks?
We do not accept AI narration for audiobooks now. It's obviously a constantly evolving space, but right now our take is that audiobooks are best done by human narration, human voices. If we were to ever change our stance on that, we would notify all of our users and make that very apparent. But we only accept human narration.
Good to know. And then let's see. Going back, we've got. Let me scroll down the chat here because I feel like we've gotten a lot of good questions. We've talked a lot about all of these. Let's see. Does Author Republic have bilingual narrators? I'm looking for an English narration, but if the person spoke Japanese for certain words, it would be ideal. Can people find that with the Authors Republic marketplace?
That specific use case, I'm not entirely sure, but we do have languages outside of just English. So it is worth checking. We have different filters available on the marketplace, or feel free to reach out to us too, and we can check. But have a look at our marketplace. There are languages available outside of just English.
Awesome. And then earlier we had a question about illustrations in audiobooks.
Yeah.
How does that how does that work?
No, it's a great question. We do sometimes have titles that have supplemental material such as illustrations or maps or things of that nature that you just really cannot convey in the same way through audio. And if you have those materials, we have the ability to upload supplemental materials such as that in our distribution workflow when you're uploading your audiobook for distribution. And there's specific specs that retailers who do accept that information ask for, which is outlined. Not all retailers accept supplemental materials, but those that do upload it and it can be available to your listeners.
Awesome. And then I feel like we've talked a lot about we've got another 15 minutes or so here. We've talked about how do you create an audiobook? How do you distribute it? Let's turn our attention a little bit more now towards now you've got the audiobook, you've got it distributed. How do you get it into people's into their apps? How do you market an audiobook? What
Right.
are some of your tips around uh you know marketing audiobooks?
And that's a great question. And I think sometimes that can be where the real work begins because there is so much competition out there, whether it's audiobooks, ebooks, print books. I think audiobooks should be looked at as part of your overall title marketing. It can fit in very nicely with your ebook and print. So what you have found works in your marketing for your other formats, just include audiobook in that. Social media, your email list, your website, any sort of event that you can do, try all of those things and what you have found works for you, whether it's because of your genre or where your readers are. Continue to do that and just incorporate audiobook into it. But at Authors Republic, we do try to support you in those marketing endeavors. And so we have promo codes that you can request. Our promo codes are fulfilled through audiobooks.com, and you can have as many as you would like. We find that those are great for reviews, or if you want to send them out to as even a giveaway for your readers. That's another way that you could utilize those. We also have promotional opportunities. So those editorial calendars that our retailers have coming up or different promotions for you to submit to. And we're continuing to grow our capabilities on the marketing side too to better support authors. But typically, I think audiobook becomes a really nice piece to add into your overall marketing strategy. And then the pieces that we can add to with promo codes and so on, we have as part of our app too, where you can simply request them from your user account.
Someone wants to know, do the authors have to pay for the promo codes, or do you
No,
guys
no, they are free. You have your account, you request them, and you get the promo codes.
how many promo codes do you get?
As many as you would like from audiobooks.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. So if I've got 25 people who want promo codes from me and they say they're willing to listen and leave a review on that audiobook, then I can get 25 codes. If I've got 100, I can get 100. That's awesome. Uh are there any geographic restrictions on where those promo codes can be used?
Not to my knowledge, audiobooks.com is pretty available. So I have not run into that at least.
Awesome. Yeah, because that is one thing. When you produce through, for example, like ACX, you'll only get a certain number of codes that can be redeemed through audible.com and a certain number of codes that will be redeemed through
Right.
audible.co.uk. And it's really only those two marketplaces. And if someone doesn't use one of those two top level domains, then sorry, you're out of luck. Or if you run out of those codes, then sorry, you're out of luck.
Right.
So that's awesome to know that authors can get as many promo codes as they need. And then I think it's worth noting there as well, from a Story Origin perspective, authors that are on Story Origin, there is an audiobook review copies feature on Story Origin, which you can use to distribute those promo codes. So when you've got that audiobook published, one of the great ways to get early reviews on that audiobook is by finding people that will giving that audiobook away for free to people who promise that they're going to leave a review. Um, and so you can collect those requests from people that uh, want to get your audiobook through Story Origin, and they would say where they plan to leave a review. So they're going to leave a review on Kobo or Google Play or Apple Books, etc. And if they say that they're going to leave a review, they would also leave their like reviewer profile links for if they're going to leave a review on Goodreads or BookBub. And so you can see, okay, do these people actually leave reviews? And what kind of books have they reviewed before? Like, do they actually review books in my genre, etc.? And so you can vet them before you give them a promo code and know, like, okay, I'm giving this book away for free. Is this someone that's actually going to listen to it, or are they just someone who just wants freebies and actually doesn't ever listen to the books they get? And so Story Origin gives you also those stats about like, here's how many audiobook promo codes they've received versus how many have they actually completed the review process through Story Origin for. And so that's another good way to just be a little bit more careful about managing your review team for your audiobooks. Is Story Origin gives you all that stats from that, essentially the community sort of aggregates together by everyone using that tool. And then in terms of other things to mention with Story Origin and Authors Republic, you guys, when you distribute to those multiple retailers, you might want to have a single landing page where listeners can find all of the retailers where your audiobook is available. So on Story Origin, there is what's called a universal audiobook link, where you can create a page that has here's the book at Google Play, here's the book at Apple, here's the book at Barnes and Noble, etc. And so you can have one page that lists all of the audiobook retailers that you have. And so when you send out a newsletter, people aren't only directed to a single place. You can make sure that they're going to end up at whatever their preferred retailer is. You don't want to make anyone feel like excluded, right? And so yeah, so I think that's another part where sort of when you talk about marketing with Authors Republic and Story Origin, that's where the two sort of come together really nicely. And you can then set up cross promotions for those audiobook review codes or those universal audiobook links on Story Origin. You can join group promos and newsletter swaps and stuff like that. So once you've gotten your book narrated, you've distributed it, then Story Origin can help on that other sort of piece, which is the marketing aspect. But I do want to turn back to one thing that we had a question about earlier, and that we've sort of briefly talked about, is those deals, getting in on those sort of those promos that retailers do around audiobooks and getting on their lists. How does that process work?
Yeah, so actually, we are about to release something new in our app. So I'm the timing is a little bit off. I may be able to give full details on it, but very soon you'll be able to see a self-service option in our app where, as the promotions become available, authors will be able to nominate their titles through Authors Republic for those opportunities. So as we get the requests from editors or editorial boards, rather, we will be adding those to the app. And then users can nominate their title. We can't guarantee that the title will be selected, obviously, but it at least gives them the visibility to potentially be included for those promotions or events on retailer sites.
Can you give us a little bit more of a concrete example of like what one of these promotions might be that a retailer would do?
Yeah, so right now there's a lot going on for back to school. So some author or some retail sites are wanting discounts, to encourage summer reading as, summer winds down and people are getting ready for back to school. So they could say something like, we only want books from the US market that are priced at $9.99 or under, $5.99 or under. So you would agree to then discount your title. Or it could be more subject or genre related, where they are just looking, there's no discount tied to it or sale, but they just would like to see any titles that are young people who are overcoming fears as they're going back to school. It can be very specific, it can be very broad and tied to like Pride Month in June is a big one where you see a lot tied to that idea. So it could be based on the actual calendar, Thanksgiving coming up, things like that. June for audiobook month as well is where we see a lot of opportunities for audiobook marketing on these editorial calendars. But it can really be a wide range, and it's not always sale oriented. It could just be genre or subject. Other times we'll get a call for specific regions, like authors from Ireland. So it's really worth checking out and seeing if your titles fit into upcoming promotions, because they can be very wide ranging.
Awesome. And then I think it's also worth talking a little bit more because someone asked earlier, what is Chirp?
Oh, for those who are familiar with BookBub, Chirp is sort of their audiobook arm, and BookBub is a recommendation site. So consume audio, well, they do ebook mostly. You can sign up and they will send you a newsletter with different deals they have across retail sites for ebooks typically. And Chirp is actually a little bit different because they are an audiobook retail platform as well. So they do discounts, daily deals, Chirp deals, and they have a large email list that they can email these out to and get a lot of notice for your audiobook. So that's Chirp, and that's the value there is they are tied to BookBub, which had a large existing list of readers, and Chirp can utilize that for their email sales as well.
Yeah, so for those that are in regards to BookBub, BookBub is sort of just like we've got a bunch of newsletters and we have a bunch of readers that are in these different buckets. Like we have mystery thriller readers, we have sci-fi fantasy readers, and they have mailing lists targeted specifically for those genres, and they'll blast newsletters out, and you can apply to be a part of one of those newsletters, and they'll promote your ebook. But when the links in those emails, they will eventually land those readers at Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Apple or Google Play. BookBub does not actually sell the ebooks. They are not the retailer. They are just have email lists that you can get in front of readers. But Chirp is different because it is both the email lists and it is the retailer, right? Sort of combined. So they are the BookBub and Amazon sort of combined when it comes to audiobooks.
Yes.
Yeah. Because yeah, that can be a little bit confusing to people, I think, when they first learn about Chirp, because they're like, oh, it's BookBub's audiobook thing. Well, it's like BookBub's audiobook thing, but also they are actually a retailer, not just a platform for sending finding readers through newsletters. Um, but they still do those deals like they do with ebooks, where it's like, one of the things readers love about BookBub is like they have lists that are targeted for like, here's 99-cent ebooks, right? So readers can find lists on Chirp that are, Chirp helps target readers and find them discounts on books and genres that they like. So that's just in terms of when you're thinking about marketing, that's something to think about and figure out the strategies around Chirp as well. Um, we've got 1 minute left, so I'm gonna wrap up the questions here. I think we've still got like a couple that we haven't answered. I think we can answer this one real quick. Can they leave a review on any, so if they get an audiobook promo code from audiobooks.com, can they leave a review on any platform even though they did not buy the audiobook from that platform? So it's dependent upon the platform. Audible will only allow you to review a book if you have bought the book through Audible. That being said, you can still leave reviews on Amazon, uh, even if you have not bought the book through Amazon. So your readers could leave a review on Amazon, but they won't be able to leave the review on Audible. They could leave the review on Apple Books and BookBub and Goodreads, and some of the other retailers don't have any, or like Kobo, you can leave reviews there. You don't need to have bought the audiobook from them to leave the review there. And then let's see, I've seen some narrators prefer printed manuscripts, Zach. So I guess one last question. Some narrators prefer printed manuscripts. Is that a cost we eat? Or does Authors Republic do this, or is that on the narrator and likely included in their pricing? So if the narrator wants like to be reading from physical paper instead of reading off a screen, is that something that the authors have to pay for?
This is a new question for me. So typically this is handled between the narrator and the author. It's not raised to Authors Republic. So I think it depends on the narrator's preferences. And if it became a huge cost question, obviously we could get involved if needed, but typically that sort of thing is handled between the author and the narrator. And we're
Awesome.
just a meeting of them.
That makes sense. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to wrap up the questions there because we're just a minute over time. And where can we, if for anyone that has any additional questions, how can we reach out to you if for authors that want maybe a more specific question answered.
Yeah, of course. Please reach out to hello@authorsrepublic.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So, and thank
Perfect.
you, Evan.
And can we just hit that on the, is there just like a contact link on the Authors Republic website? We can
That's
just hit
also
that
fine.
and
Yeah. Hello at might be a little bit more streamlined. So if you have that written down, I put it in the chat too. I'd recommend using that, but if you use it, our contact us form is great and we'll get back to you there too.
fantastic. And can you drop that link one last time for authors that want
Yes.
to get in on that increased royalty rate when they create their account on Authors Republic? The sign up link for those authors. And again, for those authors that already have Authors Republic accounts, just email, I would say email that hello@authorsrepublic.com email to get that rate. Do not create a separate Authors Republic account because that's gonna probably end up causing some confusion. So awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us and answering all of our questions, Lindsay. Is there anything else that you think that we need to that we did not address today?
No, thank you so much for your time. I know we run over. I appreciate everybody joining and sticking with us. And thank you very much, Evan.
Awesome. All right, everybody. And if anyone has questions about Story Origin, of course, you're always welcome to reach out to me directly as well. You can always email me, evan@storyoriginapp.com. And thanks again for coming. And hopefully I'll see you guys around for the next one. All right. Bye, everyone.